This is
Make It Plain.
Make it plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make it plain.
Get woke.
Folks, obviously the breaking news overnight was the leaked opinion draft about Roe versus Wade, and who better to check in with? I know I have my own feelings, but as a man, but this is something that is affecting women everywhere, and all of us men who care about women and are allies of women and have women in our families. Lord have mercy. This is a major development. Joining us now, the president of an organization of which I am a life member in my mother's name. We have here with us now the president of the National Organization for Women, Christian Nunes. Christian, God bless you. What past 12 hours really?
Right. Yes. It has been an interesting well, first, thank you for having me on your show to really talk about this dire issue that we're all hearing about and facing right now. But it has been a very, I think, emotional 12 hours for a lot of people.
So did this surprise you? I mean, we were all kind of bracing for something, but when we heard this, was it still a shock?
I think it still was a shock for all because, everyone has been talking lately about when the decision will come out regarding the Dobbs versus Jackson case and the Dobbs case versus Supreme Court. And everyone's been wanting to know when the decision will come out, and everyone was kind of anticipating later on this summer. So to see this leak happen, I think to read it and so it's very long. I haven't even gotten through all 98 pages, but to just hear some of the language and the belief systems in it, I think it still really kind of takes you back. It's still shocking to believe that the Supreme Court justices that have been put in place to really be fair and neutral would make such a determination that would overturn over 50 years of protections for women.
From what you were able to read, what was anything in particular that stood out to you?
Well, I think for me, it was just, there was, the very beginning, it's very clear. They identify that there are 3 points, 3 positions that people are coming from. But to me, I just feel that the fact that to even question if this is a right or a healthcare right or a protection that is needed for women, or it should be protected, to even argue that point, I think to question it is just concerning for me as a woman, in this day and age. Women have been fighting for our rights for a century now to even be added into the Constitution. In 1973 with, the Roe versus Wade decision, it really made sure that at least women could have the constitutional right to make that free choice and their personal autonomy regarding their reproductive rights. They needed to have that decision to have an abortion. So to believe that we would have a Supreme Court stacked with individuals who would go back and turn over the progress and the support and the healthcare for 50 years, it's just kind of a slap in the face, for all the activism I think everyone's been working so hard for.
It certainly is. What has been some of the reaction of some of the members of the organization? I'm sure you've heard from them.
Absolutely. I mean, my phone has been ringing off the hook, text messages and calls since this decision came out. And I think everyone's really concerned. Everyone's feeling emotionally charged. They want to do things. They want to figure out what they can do. And I feel like there is a place of kind of a vacillation between wanting to be hopeful and feeling helpless. Like what can we do if an overturn Roe, which it sounds like very much will happen from this document, this draft, when you have 5-4 vote. And I think that's not surprising. I think we kind of knew that after the oral arguments happened earlier this year. But to know that that is such a strong option and an outcome that possibly could happen is extremely worrisome for so many So we think about those who are directly impacted by this. We go back to the same thing we're fighting with voting rights, the same thing we're fighting with LGBTQIA status, and freedoms and protections and women. It's always the same groups that are directly impacted and most oppressed, Black, Indigenous, people of color, those in poverty, economic injustice, those marginalized communities are direct ones who are always impacted by these harsh, draconian decisions. And that's what we're seeing. And I think that's what's scaring our people the most. And they want to figure out what they can do to really kind of help.
The initial draft opinion, folks, that we all saw last night, Politico published it. Just want to read some of this. It reads, "We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. The Constitution makes no reference to abortion, and no such right is implicitly protected by any constitutional provision, including the one on which the defenders of Roe and Casey now chiefly rely, the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. That provision has been held to guarantee some rights that are not mentioned in the Constitution, but any such right must be deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition and implicit in the concept of ordered liberty. The right to abortion does not fall within this category." This is really some very scary language, isn't it?
It is. And I think what is really important to point out here is that why abortion is not covered in the Constitution is because women are not covered in the Constitution. We are not even covered in the Constitution. So if our sex, our class is not covered under law, how can anything related to our bodies or our personhood or the issues that we face or the narratives that we live be possibly covered for protections such as the right to abortion access? And that's what these justices are failing to talk about connection. It's a cognitive dissonance happening here. It's like, we want to say it's not covered, but we also know we still haven't put the Equal Rights Amendment into action that will cover women under the Constitution so that they have these protections, so that we don't have this issue. And this is like a cyclical cycle here. It's like we're not covered here, so we're not covered here. So that's the reason for making this. It's heartbreaking to think that many of these people also have daughters and wives and sisters would be willing to feel that a woman could be a justice, a woman could be a CEO, a woman could be any position in the world, but when it comes to making own choices for her body, she's incapable of making those decisions and choices.
Just so more here, this is wild, y'all. It reads, "The inescapable conclusion is that a right to abortion is not deeply rooted in the nation's history and traditions. On the contrary, an unbroken tradition of prohibiting abortion on pain of criminal punishment persisted from the earliest days of common law until 1973. Now, before you react, let me just back up a minute. You said something about how women weren't in the law. Black folk weren't either. So, basically, y'all, I want everybody to be clear. This is also saying if they want to come back and say, well, all the laws that apply to protection and due process for African Americans can go out the window too, because that ain't the history of this country.
Right.
Right. So I want everybody to be clear on that. But then this here, the on the contrary, an unbroken tradition of prohibiting abortion on pain of criminal punishment persisted from the earliest days of the common law. So what are they saying? Because it was prohibited, that history, reading was prohibited for the enslaved. So if everything that was the history that was bad, we're gonna bring back. Is that what this is trying to say?
Well, what in some ways we're seeing that, right, Reverend Mark? In some ways we are seeing exactly what this, and that's what's so concerning to me is what we're hearing in this argument and this draft was basically like, we're going to go back to the old times of limiting the rights of those we feel don't deserve to be treated as a whole person. Women, persons of color, blacks, brown, this is what this argument is saying without saying, right? If we really think about it, like you just clearly pointed out, we're going back to what was originally protected or not protected in the original Constitution. Well, guess what? What does that say for us? And this is why it's so dire and concerning, because what we know about oppressors circulate. They go from what the oppress one group. If they're going to try to control women's lives and they're clearly arguing old history, the next thing we're going to try to argue is, okay, well, we don't know. What's your limit? Next, they're going to say the Blacks don't deserve to be in spaces or have their freedoms. They need to go back to being owned. I mean, where are your limits? I really have to know. I know that sounds extreme, but you clearly read what they just said in this argument.
Again, folks, this does not sound like something that was just written last night. It sounds like something they've been kind of working on for decades. Instead of seriously pressing the argument that the abortion right itself has deep roots, supporters of Roe and Casey contend that the abortion right is an integral part of a broad entrenched right. Roe termed this as a right to privacy. Casey described it as the freedom to make intimate and personal choices that are central to personal dignity and autonomy. At the heart of liberty is the right to define one's own concept of existence, of meaning, of the universe, and the mystery of human life. The court did not claim that this broadly framed right is absolute, and no such claim would be plausible. Now, anybody who can explain this, we'll give you $1 million. Listen to this sentence. While individuals are certainly free to think and to say what they wish about existence, meaning, the universe, and the mystery of human life, they are not always free to act in accordance with those thoughts. License to act on the basis of such beliefs may correspond to one of the many understandings of liberty, but it is certainly not ordered liberty. How does this not sound like
hypocrisy?
Right. Or Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
You don't have the freedom. You can think, but you don't have the freedom to act on what
Right.
you believe these things are. What in the world is this?
And I think this is a great point to point out, Reverend Mark, because we're talking more about, this is way beyond abortion access. This is about our democracy, right? This is exactly what you're describing. We're talking about our survival. We're talking about our democracy. We're talking about our freedoms. And this is just a tactic, a strategy, a tactic that's attacking women, because this is always an attack on women, and attack on Black and Brown is what we always see. But this is a strategy to eventually continue to attack on our democracy, to remove us of our freedoms. And, it's easy for people to get lost in the word abortion and play on people's emotions and heartstrings. But we have to be awake. We have to pay attention to what we're seeing happening here. We have to pay attention to the language and that's written in this draft and what's really being said.
So bottom line, Madam President of the National Organization for Women, Christian Nunes, what are we going to do? How can we organize? What are your thoughts about? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, because I know we have a lot to figure out, but we got to do something.
Yeah, so I think there's multiple things that need to happen here. I think one, it is definitely there's national coalition groups and there's local coalition groups. I think it has to happen on a national level and a local level, because what's happening is these bills are coming out in your state legislations, right? Your state legislators, and that's how they're getting passed. And so this is like, for all those who want to pass, these right-wing extremists who want to pass these bills, this for them was like amped up for them. They got them ready, because they're like, oh, okay, now we know, we really can go forth in this. So we got to start really organizing ourselves collectively, de-silo ourselves, understand that it is not about only sticking with racial justice, not about only sticking with economic justice or this or that. We have to all come together, because it intersectionally attacks the same person. The same group of people are attacked by these bans, these restrictions, these violations of their constitutional human basic rights. So we need to come together collectively for a collective voice. We need to organize and convene. We need to get out and let them know that we are paying attention. We need to call it what we see it. And we need to definitely organize and show up, so they know that we are present. The other thing I think we have to do is, midterms are here. These midterms, the redistricting, is another trick they played, right? We see what these redistricting and these lines and what's happening here, and how they're trying to create whole districts that are making districts that were once blue red, and trying to wipe out districts where people can no longer have are limiting polling places or things. We're seeing so many trips of gerrymandering and and all these issues that we're seeing. And so we have to pay attention to that. And so we need to make sure that we are mobilizing and we're really getting out there to recruiting candidates who are going to represent us, truly represent us, not in name, not in affiliation, but represent our issues, the issues of the constituents, the issues of people who are directly impacted. We need to candidates and elected officials who are not so disconnected that they are just trying to get that title and then they're not going to be able to go back to their communities and do the work. So we have to be strict about who we are putting our work behind, who we're going to be electing, who we're going to be supporting. And we have to make sure that we are trying to vet, and look at those candidates very clearly. And then the third thing I think we have to do is, and I think these all go together, is then we have to go and we have to show up at our state legislators. Show up, have these meetings, talk to them, both sides, talk to them about why this impacts everyone. It's not a partisan issue. This is a livelihood issue. This is a democracy issue. And we have to let people know that. And we have to continue to move forward in those three things. Right now, abortion is still legal, so it has not been overturned. We have to support the providers that are out there. We have to support the local providers who a lot of times work with the local individuals and refund. And we have to just continue to support and work and everything we can to make sure that we are protecting each other, supporting each other, but organizing strong. An election front, local front, organizing front, show up, have those conversations that are hard, but not get so stuck in the party and party affiliation that we forget to have conversations with the other side, which sometimes we possibly be able to win over by taking our time to really talk and have a real, serious conversation.
Yeah, a lot that needs to be done, a lot of work that needs to be done. Folks, get involved. We invite you to go to now.org as well. Join. If you've never been a member of an organization.
Yes.
See, again, folks, we're not going to social media this away. We're not going to tweet this away. In fact, we may not even have control of Twitter much longer. Mm-hmm. If we ever had it. If we ever had it. We think we had it, but we probably didn't. So we've got to organize. Mm-hmm. And we've got to keep fighting because they've been working on this for 50 years and they never stopped.
Never stopped. But they've been consolidated and collective, and that's what we have to get like that same way.
We got to get like that. Christian Nunes is providing the leadership of the National Organization of Women, the women's organization, the Legacy organization, and she's working with other organizations as well. We'll be talking to some of them also. Yeah. Christian Nunes, we thank you as always.
Thank you.
Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. As always, perform an act of kindness on behalf of an elder or young person. Write a letter to a sister or brother who just so happens to find her or himself incarcerated. Offer libations to the ancestors upon whose sturdy shoulders we all now stand. And above all, give thanks to the God of your understanding by whatever name you call her and him. All God asks of us is that we give each other love. Thanks for giving MIP love. And please remember to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.